There was a wealthy widow named Madame Olay, who lived in the heart of a prosperous town. Her estate stretched far, her name commanded respect, and her generosity was whispered across the land. But hidden behind her riches was a story of sorrow. Her only son, Kofi, had been paralyzed from the waist down after a tragic accident 5 years ago. Since that day, Madame Olay had lived with one mission: to find a woman who would truly love Kofi, not for his wealth, but for who he was. She had met many who smiled politely, only to flinch at his wheelchair behind closed doors. One by one, they left, their love conditional, their interest transactional. Then, one morning, she called her loyal housekeeper and made an announcement that shocked everyone. "I want you to spread the word across this town and beyond. Tell them, I'm inviting 4 young women to live in my mansion for 30 days. At the end of it, one may marry my son, but it is not what it seems." Within days, the mansion gates buzzed with hopeful faces. After a rigorous selection, 4 women were chosen: Adana, Zara, and Ngozi. They came from different backgrounds. Adana, the elegant daughter of a bankrupt chief; Zara, the ambitious merchant's apprentice; and Ngozi, quiet, Amina, the city girl with dreams too big for her village. Each had their reasons, each had their secrets. They were given their own rooms, beautiful clothes, access to the estate, but one rule stood firm: they had to live humbly, help with housework, and spend time getting to know Kofi. At first, they all smiled sweetly, pretending kindness. But when Kofi entered the room for the first time in his wheelchair, the masks started to crack. Zara forced a greeting, and Ngozi bowed with respect, and Amina whispered later to the others, "I thought he'd be more presentable." Madame Olay said nothing, but she watched everything. Week 1 was polite. Kofi, quiet and humble, made conversation. Adana barely answered. Zara talked too much about investments. Amina flirted openly but didn't listen. Only Ngozi asked about his favorite books, his drawings, his dreams. Week 2, the test began. A storm hit the region. Power went out. The mansion was cold. Madame Olay had left suddenly on business, leaving the 4 women alone with Kofi and the elderly staff. Now, the real nature of each began to surface. Adana complained nonstop about the food. Zara tried to bribe a maid to give her wine. Amina refused to do chores, saying, "I'm not a servant." Only Ngozi cooked with the chef, mopped floors with the cleaner, and sang softly to Kofi when he was in pain. On the 10th night, Kofi had a severe fever. His medicine was missing. Adana locked her door. Zara screamed and ran out. Amina pretended she didn't hear, and Ngozi stayed, sat by his side, and prayed, cooling his head with cloth until sunrise. The next morning, Kofi was stable. Madame Olay returned, silent. Then came the final test. Everyone dressed in their best. The guests were told that Kofi would announce his choice of bride. Adana wore diamonds. Zara wore gold. Amina wore a dress worth more than her dowry. And Ngozi wore a simple white gown. At dinner, Madame Olay raised her hand. "I have watched, I have listened, and now I will speak." The room fell silent. "One of you treated my son like a man, not a burden, not a bank account, not a stepping stone. Only one of you passed the test." She turned to Ngozi. "Come forward, child." Ngozi stood, trembling. "Everything in this house will one day belong to Kofi. And now, to you. If you accept." Tears streamed down Kofi's face. He reached for her hand. She took it. Adana stormed out. Zara cursed under her breath. Amina fainted. And so, the wedding was held 3 months later. But that's not the end. 2 years later, Kofi miraculously began to regain strength in his legs. With therapy and love, he stood again. He built a hospital in his mother's name, and Ngozi ran the foundation. They adopted children and turned the mansion into a home for orphans. As for the other women, Adana returned to a life of luxury and loneliness. Zara lost everything in a risky deal. Amina married a politician who later left her for someone younger. The people said Madame Olay was wise, but she only smiled and replied, "A woman's true beauty is revealed not in how she dresses, but how she serves when no one is watching."